Thanks for joining. John Essig from Simplify. I will be leading this presentation and demonstration on end-to-end planning and SAP Analytics Cloud to help share how you can automate the collection and aggregation of your plan, how you can build it from the ground up, and then how you can do scenario modeling with the solution, all the way from revenue planning, sales, expenses, HR, capex, all feeding into your financial statement plan. So really end to end. So just a little background on myself. I'm a managing partner and architect with Simplify. Have been implementing planning consolidations, analytics solutions for the past 11 years. Before that, come from a corporate finance background, was administering financial planning and consolidated reporting up to our parent company on the client side. Have my CPA, worked in a variety of finance and also an audit role previously. So more of a process focused individual and primarily work with the SAP technology again over the last decade plus. So quick introduction on Simplify, and I'll turn off my webcam, so nice to meet you. Quick introduction on Simplify. So we are a firm of business process experts focused on finance and analytics, so analytics planning consolidations. We're dedicated to the SAP technology. We focus, do 90% of more of what we do today is with SAP Analytics Cloud. We also do SAP group reporting for consolidations, data warehousing, and grew up in the space primarily working with SAP BPC before moving to these cloud platforms. So we have offices in Chicago as well as in Montreal, and we do implementations. We have prepackaged content, which we'll be sharing today to help you accelerate your deployment. We provide training, managed services, etc. Our number one focus as a firm is referenceable customers, and we're really focused on driving value in those relationships and hold that above profitability, right? We believe that if we do the right thing for our customers, all that stuff will follow, and it has for us as a firm. So along those same veins, these are some examples of some of our customers. So we work with mid-market customers to really large enterprise customers, again, with this being our number one focus as a firm, is the referenceability. So SAP Online Cloud, which we're focused on today, we're really looking and spending most of our time here on the planning side of the house. But SAP Analytics Cloud is SAP's strategic solution for planning, business intelligence, analytics reporting, as well as predictive, all in one solution. So that can connect to your other cloud investments, also to your on-premise investments. So this is SAP's strategic tool for analytics all across the platform, right? So on top of S4, on top of your operational data, everything, right? This solution comes with a lot of prepackaged business content from SAP as well as from partners like ourselves. So our content, for HR and workforce, for marketing, for supply chain, operations, sales. You go to the content network on SAP Online Cloud and you can download and plug in this content to your data sources and help you accelerate deployment and see quicker time to value. So for example, you could plug in the CRM to your C4 structure or HR to SuccessFactors, and there's standard reports and analytics that are available to you right away once you configure the connection. So we're focused again on planning, which both for SAP Analytics Cloud can help you both from a line of business planning perspective as well as FP&A. So with an FP&A lens, this is an enterprise planning solution, so it can support everything you need from an annual planning perspective. So your P&L, your sub detailed modules for sales and revenue, HR, capex, working capital, balance sheet, cash flow. It can also support your rolling forecasts or your what-if analysis, your scenario planning and simulations within the tool. And it is your solution for reporting and analytics. So you can get all of your book reporting out of the solution with actual versus budget results, your management reporting, as well as your consolidated results. The planning solution does allow you to consolidate and and plan those assumptions within this solution too without having to go back out to another solution. A key tenet with this tool, SAP Analytics Cloud was built from the ground up with a lot of influences, based off of SAP's, long background within the solution, but it was really built based off of simplicity with speed as well, built on top of HANA's platform. It can scale up and down very, very easily. So from a planning perspective, you have really rich modeling capabilities available within the solution. There's a lot of flexibility as to what level of detail you can do planning at, whether that's top down, bottom up, what if simulations, private versioning. So, corporate has this set of blessed, maybe versions or budgets or forecasts, but the businesses and line of business as well can copy that data and create their own local forecasts, right? And they don't need to be dependent upon corporate to do that, right? So you can use the solution for predictive forecasting, since we have predictive analytics and planning in one solution. It has built-in collaboration functionality, commentary, workflow, allocations, and an Excel integration as well. So Simplify as a firm, what we've done on top of SAP's content that comes along with the solution is, based off of our decade plus of experience implementing SAP analytics and planning solutions. There's a lot that differs between industries, as well as based off of company specific requirements, but there's also a lot that is really common across many different industries, and there's no reason we need to build planning applications from scratch. So we provide you with a really good starting point, these prepackaged solutions that really end to end from a planning perspective can help you accelerate your deployment. You can do a low config deployment in a matter of weeks, or you can more build to spec, right? And you have a timeline, a resource plan dependent upon your requirements. So we have really very fully baked solutions from a planning perspective, also extend line of business analytics, and then we have industry specific solutions on top of that. And this is just an example, so not only planning but also performance reporting. We have prepackaged content for that. So when you look at bridge reporting, comparing budget OI versus your actual OI or revenue or EBITDA bridges, the value of having your planning and reporting and analytics in one solution, you have these bridges and you can publish them right out of the solution, right? And we can use the calculation engines that are available to us in SAP Analytics Cloud to help automate this as well, so that it's easily presentable in the analytics. This is a standard planning architecture, so we have these cubes or submodules, for sales planning or for revenue and costing, or for on the expense side we have HR and capital and expenses, and these all flow into your P&L, into your financial statements as well. So this simplifies architecture for our prepackaged content. It does differ, company to company, industry to industry, based off of what makes sense in your specific applications. But a lot of this is very, very common. You can check out our YouTube channel. We have in each one of these areas we're spending doing an overview today of end-to-end planning. But in each one of these areas, you could spend an hour plus, right, just focused on HR planning or sales and margin planning or CRM. And so would welcome you to come check out some of our videos on our YouTube channel. This is an example of some of our customers that we've worked with, and we develop really long-term relationships. Fiveserve has been a customer of ours for 6 years, right? Past 6 years, and we've implemented many different applications for them. Most recently, HR planning with SAP Analytics Cloud. We also have helped them migrate. They went through an acquisition, helped them migrate, their Oracle investments to SAP, where they had a lot of success from a systems and from an FP&A and consolidations perspective. Another customer of ours, Wolverine Worldwide. We've implemented more Big Bang over the last year, a lot of different models for them. And again, you can check out their customer presentation on YouTube, search Simplify and click on our videos. And you can check out their presentation on their use case. And then we'll just share one other customer use case here. And this just goes back to, again, the types of relationships that we develop, right? A nice quote from their CEO here. So some examples of some large enterprise and more mid-market companies across a variety of different industries that we work with. So, all right. Well, with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and and jump into the demonstration. So you should be able to see my home screen here, and what what you can notice here is this home page here actually differs. I'll just refresh my page here, based off of, you can have a standard kind of home page that's broadcasted out to your users. Your users can also customize or configure their home page and just pin different graphs or visualizations or KPIs that they're interested in, so that as they log onto the system, they can see that and quickly access and report off of it. So I have like our headcount waterfalls in here so that we could see year-over-year change and what's going on there. We've got some operational data here looking at injuries, safety information. We have our recent stories or some compensation data that's pinned here, as well as CRM, looking at our weighted pipeline. So this is all really, specific to the user. Can also again be kind of governed and pushed out to your individual users. We'll click on the menu bar here and just to kind of walk you through the capabilities within SAP Online Cloud. So we have our stories here. So this is within the tool we can create our reports, our dashboards, as well as our planning enabled stories. So this is where we spend most of our time once we've built out our model or our application, and this is all using standard kind of self-service, easy to use functionality. In addition to that, if you gave us a piece of paper and said I want a dashboard to look exactly like this, with the analytic application we could pretty much build that from the ground up. Everything you'll see with our prepackaged content today is utilizing standard story content, and is something that business user could build, right? This is SAP's platform for digital boardroom. So the analytics and scenario planning capabilities in these stories that we build for you, you can visualize through SAP's digital boardroom, which is a big screen, touch enabled. You can have it in a boardroom, or you can also use this on a shop room floor too, right? So everything you build in SAP Online Cloud is natively touch responsive, right? Within the tool, SAP Online Cloud is a really good OLAP modeling tool. So you build your cubes and your dimensionality, which makes it really easy to slice and dice data. You can also load in relational data sets. SAP Online Cloud has a calculation engine, which we call data actions. We can leverage a wizard-based approach to build these advanced formulas within the tool to really any type of planning calculation that you have in Excel, you could put in this solution and streamline it with an actual system, right? To not only help you collect and aggregate your plan, but also to help you build it up based off of your drivers. Along with data actions, you can do allocations within the tool. So if you wanted to do overhead allocations, or if you wanted to do profitability allocations, we can support that as well. Trees, which is a pretty kind of neat available within the solution. Again, this is SAP's predictive, go-to solution for predictive as well. So you have planning and you have predictive in one tool. It's a nice marriage. So you can use this predictive engine to take historical trends by customer groups or product lines and use that to seed your plan. Or one of the popular scenarios as well is you can take this predictive engine and plug it into like your CRM data and try to figure out what's driving the deals that are going to be closing for you, and how can you predict what opportunities are going to translate into a sale and ultimately into revenue. We have calendarization capability within the solution. So this allows you to, for example, set a budget or a forecast due on X date. And based off of, for example, if you wanted to publish out an expense plan template or task to all of your cost center managers, you could publish that out as of a certain date. It would have a due date. Based off of the owners you have by cost center, it will automatically send them a link where they click on it, and it takes them to their expense planning step. They complete it, they hit done, and then you have visibility as to where they're at in the planning process. So this is really neat. You can even, one of the things, my favorite parts about this is you can even send little reminders or pokes to folks to say, hey, have you, and it'll send it from a system email, so it doesn't have to come from yourself within FP&A. So that's all functionality driven from a technical perspective. We have all the security that you would expect in a solution like this. So you can secure by your dimension structures, so by your sales orgs or cost centers or legal entities. You can configure that based off your requirements. Very easy to manage. You have your content network where you can upload the content from SAP or other business partners like ourselves. You have transport, so you can move data, easily between environments, and then you have connections. So we can connect SAP Online Cloud to really any data source that supports ODBC. We also have a lot of built-in connectors for both SAP data sources as well as non-SAP data sources, right? So if you want to connect this to S4, this is, again, SAP's strategic solution for analytics across the platform as well as planning. So there's a lot of built-in capabilities to connect to your different views in S4 and do analytics on it. But we have customers that have built applications on top of Workday. We have built applications on top of Oracle systems, right? So any structured data system we can use as a starting point for our modeling. This is a really strong modeling tool as well, as I was mentioning. So hopefully that's a good introduction for the folks on the call who aren't yet familiar with SAP Analytics Cloud. So again, we're going to be focused more on the planning today from an end-to-end perspective. So I'm going to click on my catalogs here. And what you can see in our catalogs, this is user-specific, and these are different catalogs that we've grouped together here for our different planning processes as well as our different reporting processes. So we have a catalog for consolidations, for CapEx planning, for report books. We're going to click into the finance dashboard, which is really going to kind of guide us through these planning processes, and we can see kind of how they all come together. So today we're going to focus first on sales and margin planning. So we're going to take you through that process flow. Next, we're going to we're then going to move into HR planning, and then followed by expense planning, capital planning, and then we're going to see how that all flows into your financial statements at the end of the day. So we'll click first by starting into our sales and margin planning process, and you'll see we have this really end-to-end process flow that is going to guide us through all the way from our plan setup to, in this scenario, we're looking at volumes and prices and costs, and how do we build this our plan all the way through margin end to end. So understand there are different people who would have inputs and stakeholders and owners of different parts of this process. So for example, your plan setup, that might be done by your corporate FP&A group. Your volume planning, this actually might be done by sales managers or another group or organization, or demand planning group, right? Your sales drivers, such as your pricing information, maybe they're managed by contract managers, right? So we're showing this all together so you can kind of see how it works. But if I'm a sales manager and I'm only responsible for doing volume planning, when I come into this tool, I'm just going to see the pertinent steps to me, right? And as I mentioned earlier, when we blast this out on the calendar, I'll actually get a link that takes me directly to what I have to do, and then I hit complete, and then I'm done. So I'm going to take you through kind of the setup, the target setting. So as part of the setup, you could load FX rates, you could load any other assumptions as a starting point. We'll show you how to set up your targets that then can guide your planning users, help provide a target for them to measure against as they're building up their plan. I'm going to take you through the volume planning, the sales drivers. An example in here, we're not going to go through every single step, but you can use this tool for revenue planning assumptions. So if you want to incorporate on top of your sales plan, if you want to incorporate like lead times or revenue recognition assumptions, you can do that with this solution. We also have standard costing available within the tool. We're pulling our standard costs in this content. We're assuming we're pulling that from history or from your ERP system. But you can't even do like bill of material, scenario modeling within this solution as well. In addition to that, we have transferred pricing baked in so that if you're doing sales across multiple countries, we can automatically generate intercompany revenue transactions and margins and markups based off of assumptions and handle that for you, so that this isn't a bottleneck in your planning process, right? As you're building everything else up, you have this driver based, and based off of where we typically procure a product from, we generate those transactions and then consolidate and eliminate them automatically. And then ultimately we get that into our gross margin at the end of this, and then we'll move on to the expense planning after this. So we'll start here with the target setting step. So this step, what we're going to do is we're just kind of set up some initial targets for our plan. So we come in, we see our prior year actual, and we see our prior year forecast, and we're going to be building the annual budget for 2022 from the ground up. So you see we don't have any sales volumes loaded. We have some other data copied in here as a starting point. But first we're just going to set a target. So say for example, if company-wide we wanted to set a sales target of $22 billion, we can type that in and enter it in. And SAC is automatically going to disaggregate that down to the countries and segments and products that are in our cube, which is pretty neat. But if we pick Canada, we can see that 22 billion, and because we have 10 countries or whatever, it's just really or 12 countries, was really just allocated down as one of those 12, right? So it's just a very even number. We wanted to get that target to get disaggregated based off of our history at least, and do this a little bit more intelligently. So we're going to go back and select all, and we're actually going to seed our target. And this is standard data management capability, that's available within the solution to manage versions and copy data. So we're going to seed our target version with our forecast data from this current year, and we're going to copy from 2021 to 2022. So we're going to go ahead and hit run. And we'll see that $22.2 billion number populated here. We can go in and change this target and say, hey, we want to set an overall 5% growth rate, across the board, right, company-wide from a target perspective. And then we can drill into and now see that Canada, it's automatically disaggregated based off of our last year forecast. So we've got a $4.7 billion target here. We could change this, to be whatever number we want it to be, or apply a percent change to this as well. So we can put 4750 for 4.75 billion. And that's, you see it, that's updated, 8,300 records. So the historical data has been seeded at a pretty granular level by product, by customer. So that's keeping that makeup when we make that adjustment automatically. We can also get even a little bit more fancy with this, and we can use the predictive engine to seed this. Or we could, define seasonality when we seed this and say, hey, we want a template where we're going to define exactly the seasonality we want to see by month, and then we can allocate the data and use that to make up this disaggregation. So we can be pretty selective with how we want the data to disaggregate as we're keying in these higher level numbers, which is pretty neat. The other thing I'll share is that predictive scenario. So I'll come in here and I'll show you a little bit about the version management as well. So we can click on version management, and this again, as an end user, we can create these private versions where we can do some scenario analysis in. So for example, we could just copy annual budget into a new category or a new version. So we'll create something called predictive plan 2, and we'll just create a blank version for now. And when we create that version, instead of copying it, we'll actually build this based off of a predictive scenario. So we just select the cell. In this circumstance, we're going to pick net sales, and we're going to go ahead and create a predictive forecast. So when we make this selection here, we have a few options. We can let SAC choose the algorithm it wants to apply. We can pick the algorithm from the selection or drop-down list. We can pick the time period that we want to use as a basis to create the prediction. And then we can also pick the periods that we want to actually seed the data with. And then SAP Analytics Cloud is going to go and pull all that historical data and come up with a prediction or at least a starting point for our plan, so we can do that a little bit more intelligently. So we could use this to seed the plan. We could also just use this as another version for comparative analysis. And when it comes up with this, it provides us an upper and lower confidence interval. We can hit OK, and then it's actually going to take the data for us, and it's going to publish it back to this version that we could utilize as we see fit. So that's the initial kind of target setup. So next year we're going to move into our volume planning step. So I'll click on volume planning, and you could do this in a lot of granularity, or you could do this by country. You could do this by sales org. You could have your sales managers in here loading their assumptions, and then you could have finance or regions making adjustments to it on top, right? So we're going to come in here and we're going to do this plan and build it with the Canada sales org selected. And at this point, for our budget, we don't have any volumes yet loaded into the system. So what we're going to do is we're going to seed our volume as well as our pricing information based off of our historical actual data. So we're going to copy it into budget from actual. We're going to run that, and that's going to seed both 2022 and 2023. So once we populate that, what you'll see is pretty neat here. We can see our sales volume numbers here tie out to our prior year actual. Okay, and we've already actually seeded our pricing information and made some small tweaks to it so that our gross sales numbers are slightly different based off of some updated pricing assumptions. But it's pretty neat. So as we come in here and build up our volume plan for Canada, for example, we can look at wholesale, and maybe the wholesale business segment we want to plan mainly based off of material groups. So we could come in and make an adjustment, for example, to fabric softener, and plan a specific dollar amount that we're expecting to meet. And again, that's going to disaggregate all the way down to the individual SKUs and customers based off of our historical makeup. And you can see our number callouts are updating immediately. So our sales volume totals are updating here, as well as our gross sales are recalculating as we're changing these assumptions. So the way that we seeded this data and copied it in was all the way down to that, product SKU and customer sold to level. So there's a lot of flexibility actually with how we could kind of plan in these different groupings. So if we're looking at retail, maybe for retail, or for wholesale, for example, let's focus first on wholesale. When we made that change to fabric softener, maybe we want to actually plan down to individual SKU, or plan down to a customer ship to example even. So we can come here and select material, and then we're going to see that material is going to be added right away to our fabric softener, so we can see each individual product SKU and plan down at that individual level. We don't have to, but we have that availability when we have exceptions. So I'll unselect material. Let's look at retail this time, and maybe for retail you don't care as much to plan by material group. Maybe you want to just really focus on key customers. So we could actually remove material group from our view, and then we could drill into specific customers. And hey, this is a lot of customers. I just want to focus maybe on my top 10 customers. So I can actually just right click here, say create top 10, hit OK. And now I can just look at my retail segment, and I can focus on the top customers that I care about, and I could maybe even group the other customers and plan them all together, right? So a lot of flexibility as to what level of detail and how you approach this. Not something that you'd get with a lot of traditional solutions, right? So that, again, that's part of the value of this solution being built from the ground up, with simplicity as a focus. So this is the sales volume plan. Next, we're going to get to the pricing. So we'll click on our sales drivers here. In the first step, we're actually planning our average selling prices. So we have our budgeted numbers for our gross sales compared to our previous year actuals. We have our price information, which we did make some changes to already. It looks like we were modeling for them. So these calculations, same thing, we'll seed the pricing information based off of our historical data. But same concept here, this default view, we're looking at customer group and material group, but we could come in and utilize any of the dimensionality that we have in our model to really, plan very specific customer pricing exceptions, right? We could just, we can use all the hierarchies and everything that we have in our material groups to drill in and plan changes. So if we wanted to say, hey, in general, consumer products, our pricing is going up, 5%, but then the shower gel material group specifically, we're going to put that price point at 55. We can do that, and we have a lot of flexibility there. So. And then again, as we're making these updates, our number callouts are updating. So we're not having to run some job. All of this is real time. We can see the totals. What is the impact on sales? It's not. We're not coming back to this 15 minutes later and then, oh man, I keyed in the wrong number, or that's not the result I want, right? So this real time capability of this calculations is really pretty neat. Getting into discounts and rebates, same concept here. So instead of planning average pricing, we're looking at percents as a percent of our gross sales. So these drivers, then these percents that we entered are then used to calculate and post to our discounts and to our rebates up here, which are already different from our actual since we've updated our volume plan. But same concept here, we could actually, maybe when you're planning discounts and rebates, maybe you want to focus specifically on individual customers, right? So you could come in here and say, hey, I know for this customer we're expecting a rebate. This may be something that's starting in July too. So you could drill into your year and you could just apply that starting in July. But you key in your rebate and what you'll see is your numbers will update right away accordingly, right? So pretty cool. And then ultimately, when we look at our sales review, we can review all these calculations. So we see our actual, we see our budget numbers that we've just built from the ground up with our volume based off of our pricing information. We see our total across Canada, our average price across all of our products, our discounts and rebates. And same concept here. If we wanted to change average price here, these numbers are all going to recalculate on the fly, right? So when we're at a point where we say, okay, yes, we're happy with the sales numbers, the way they look, and we're ready to post that to the P&L, then we're able to basically just click a button and that'll post it to our P&L accounts as well for review and comparison. I'll note as well, as you're going through this with Canada, we could be planning in US dollars. You probably would want to be planning in Canadian dollars, right? And currency translations can also be configured to happen on the fly. So same thing, you saw these number callouts. That's a way that we're looking to enhance our content based off of what we're already doing at our customers today. So we've got these live calculations as we're updating our numbers, and you can have live local currency versus Canadian dollar view within here as well. So, which is pretty neat. So next, we've loaded our volume plan, we've loaded our sales, we've calculated our sales or our revenue. We could apply again, if we have revenue recognition assumptions. We can also apply our standard costing assumptions. So here we have, similar to our pricing, we could take historical data to seed cost assumptions, or more likely, if you do standard cost, we could load that from your ERP system. If you wanted to make some sort of adjustments to your standard rates, you could do so. So we've got your material, your direct labor, manufacturing as examples in here. And based off your volumes, these rates are then going to be used to dollarize your standards. So exact same concept as we saw on the sales planning side. You get into our variance planning, and we can also review our calculations. So we already calculated and posted our sales plan in our last step. We can do the same thing and calculate and post our COGS. And then, in addition to that, to get all the way down to actual gross profit, you could come in here and plan specific variances. So you could copy from cell to cell or just input these variances if you don't have these driver-based, right? If you had some logic, an Excel-based formula that you wanted to streamline in to help, automatically calculate purchase price variance, which we have done before. You can do that, right? Or maybe you want to model this and then just input it. Either way is okay. Then you see a lot of these same drivers here within this template as well. So at this point, we built up our plan all the way through gross margin, and we're going to next head in and start building up our expense plan. So we're first going to go into HR, and then expense planning, and then capital. So when we look at our people costs, right, we could plan for our HR based off of a headcount and cost center level of detail, right? And we could be planning based off of additions and terms and transfers, by function, by business unit. We can also plan down to the individual employee level, right? So this process flow, has flexibility where, for one business unit or for one function, maybe we want to plan headcount. For another, maybe we want to get down to that employee level. So we have the flexibility to do both here within this model. So for example here, we can plug this into SuccessFactors. We've also integrated SAP Online Cloud with Workday, with ADP, with PeopleSoft, so many different source systems. Again, doesn't need to be SAP. So this first step in this process flow, we set up the connections to those source systems, and we're pulling in the employee and position information into our model automatically, right? So you hire a new employee, we're plugged into that master, we're pulling that into the system. Next, same concept here. Instead of our organizational structures here, we're pulling our annual salaries and any other information that's interesting from your source system that's going to help us drive our HR plan here. From a annual plan or forecast perspective, we're also going to load a few drivers to help us, calculate and dollarize the assumptions for, taking our annual salaries and calendarizing that for calculating, merit, for example. You key in a driver for 4% or 3%, right? And key in a start month, and then that's going to apply a merit increase rate based off of that driver. So right now we're looking at US, so we have some US specific drivers in the system, so we can, based off of these rules, we can automatically calculate FICA FUTA SUTA, for example, right? So that you're focused on planning the business items that make sense, the hires, terms, changes in base salary, and all of these calculations and logic are automated for you. You can also plan monthly insurance rates per average. And then again, we can use these drivers on the right-hand side based off of your underlying accounting to figure out how we want to calendarize the dollars and expenses. You go in, if you wanted to plan this for Canada or for other countries, you can set up similar type accounts based off your local requirements. So these drivers then help build up our plan. We can look at specifically steps here that then take the data out of your source system, and we copy them into a budget essentially. So these are the admin steps, or we copy them into forecast. These are the admin steps. I'll take you through just a couple template examples here, and then we'll move on to expense planning. So one here is planning by individual employees. Like I said, you could plan by employees or at a headcount level. You might have some drivers that are at a cost center level instead of a region or entity like we showed you on the previous one, so 401k, overtime, etc. Let's go right into the employee level planning template. So this again is pulling the data out of our HR systems such as SuccessFactors. We have our employees, we have our base annual pay. We can make adjustments to that here in total. We have our merit that's been seeded in globally, but we can also override this. If we have someone who's getting a 3% merit increase expected or 3.5, we can make a change here. We can plan terms, new hires, and we can also attach commentary and information to this. So this is pretty detailed. It helps you drive a lot more accuracy, and a lot of companies are doing this in Excel, and a fair amount of companies are utilizing a system. This is a really good tool to help you streamline the collection and aggregation and all the downstream calculations. So we have steps here again for adding new employees, a step in here where we then here, after we load our assumptions, we calculate, we take those annual salaries and we distribute them out to the months, and then based off the drivers, we calculate, overtime, bonus, taxes, and benefits, right? So a little bit of a different view. That's the employee view. We can also do this, down to individual, headcount if we want to plan this at a little bit of a different level, right? So this, similar to sales and margin view here, we could plan this at a macro level, or we could get into, specific cost centers or functions that we want to plan. And we see our compensation levels here. We see our number call outs for our total compensation average. And we can go in and make a change to bonus, for example. So say we expect our bonuses in 2021, the average to go back up. We can make that change. And as we make that change, we'll see our bonuses based off of our headcount numbers update automatically, right? So just different level of detail, different views, same model. We also can plan the merit and the start months, and this is a little bit more of a simplified kind of view for headcount planning, right? We also have the roll forward available within here, so this is where you would go and plan, specific new hires or terms by your different functions that you would want to drill into when you're planning that. The other thing I'll notice just really quick, and then do want to move on, we have a pretty robust planning process already built, many hours spent, in all these prepackaged solutions. We spent hundreds and into thousands of hours of building this content that you can leverage out of the box, right? So this is one of the examples. This transfer process can be a big pain point for people. So we actually have prepackaged content so that you can request a transfer, so that it can be approved, so that you're making sure you're doing that actual handshake. So as a cost center owner, I could come in here and I could actually submit a transfer for request. So I could say, hey, I'm going to transfer Jennifer Smith, and I'm going to pick the month in July, and I'm going to pick, through the end of the year, I'm going to run that. And then that request is going to be sent. That's processed on a schedule. It sends these requests, every 15 minutes or so. And the receiving cost center can actually then say, okay, I have Jennifer Smith incoming. Here's the salary. Here's the impact to my budget that needs to be approved, these salaries and wages. But not until I hit the approve button is this going to be reflected in my budget. Or I can reject it and send it back to the sender, right? So pretty nice process. You can do these changes in mass as well, in addition to kind of processing these one by one. But our customers have really been appreciating that. Then you could do reporting analytics on top of this at the end. All right, so next we're going to move into expense planning. So we've built our detailed HR plan, and we have that feeding into our expense plan by cost center and by cost element or account, right? So we can see, by cost center department, we see our payroll salaries, and we can see that's grayed out, right? Because that's coming from another system here. We might want to go and plan for travel expenses, for example. Maybe we expect an uptick in travel expenses in September based off of changes here coming. So we could actually plan and say, all right, we expect our total year expenses to be 200,000, and SAC is going to automatically lock these periods, not make a change, and then allocate the remainder to the remaining period. So, which is pretty neat. We can take these expenses, we can allocate them out to our different business segments, or even down to product lines, right? And then this is an annual view, but we could also look at a rolling forecast view for expenses. Capital planning. So I'll just cover this very briefly here. So this is one of our most popular prepackaged solutions that we have. We're actively implementing at a couple companies, and have a lot of interest, and happy to share our roadmaps and documentation behind these solutions. There's a lot of enhancements that we're planning for this as well, that companies can take advantage of when working with us, and on top of the SAP Online Cloud platform. Again, nothing we've done here is custom dev. This is all just configuring functionality within SAC to help you accelerate your deployment. So here, with capital planning, we can plan new projects, we can plan new assets, we can evaluate those projects based off of different KPIs like profitability index, NPV, IRR. We can actually put projects for review and approval, and then once they're actually approved, That then moves the data into a forecast category. Up until that point, it's really these are all the proposed projects, right? So we'll just click into a quick project that's already been built up. So we have identified the time frame on here, the approval levels that are required, whether it's budgeted yet or not, the IRR target, and expected NPV, and then we can also capture all this commentary. So we have a project summary section, a business case, metrics and analysis. So we build this up for each one of our individual projects, and what we can do is we can actually take these summaries, and we have a view like this. We also have a view I'll share with you in a minute that has all the financials for the project and other justification. But you can take that and this and actually export these into books, right? So we could batch export this and publish out all of our 200 proposed projects, so that we can review that in a PowerPoint or print it out, right? Or just in the system, you can go and change and review. So as you're building up these projects, you can also look at them in just one report, which has each project on each individual row, and you can sort and pivot them based off your NPV or IRR to help you prioritize which projects you want to focus on. So there's that kind of summary project view. We have a project view here as well that shows our discounted, if this is a revenue generating project, will show us our discounted cash flow and NPV if that's positive, right? So within here we have our different drivers. So we have our initial capital outlay in year 0, and then we have this time horizon. So this project we have out for the next 5 years or so. And we have drivers to help us build up all of this. So maybe in year 2, if we expect our revenue to be 5 million, we can change that, and our P&L is all going to update accordingly based off of the drivers that we've already seeded into our project. So we can set up these standard drivers that then we copy into our projects and use for analysis. And we're not only going to plan the operating income, but also the cash impact. And we do that based off of drivers that we have defined for DSO, DIO, DPO, again, that we copy in as a standard, but we can always go change these in addition to them, right? Once we're done modeling our project, we calculate our DCF, we calculate even our NPV and IRR, which IRR is a more challenging calculation to calculate. So this is definitely assets that we built that you can take advantage of. And just like in Excel, you've got to input an estimated IRR, so it can go back and try to derive and figure that out. And it'll calculate that for you. So then and again, you can publish that into a book. And once you have your approved projects, so you push all your approved projects to your plan or your forecast version based off of that status that you saw earlier. So I think I showed you that status. There was a button where you could change it from initial draft to approved, right? But then also you can plan your financial impact from that. So you look at, depreciation, for example. If you can plan, your different assets and their useful life and their, I think it's, is this the one I wanted to plan? Here we go. So yeah, you can plan your assets and your useful life, and within the solution here too, you can have these instructions and definitions to guide you through it. We have standard calculations in here for depreciation, for straight line depreciation, standard calcs for double declining balance, for units of production, which basically allow you to allocate the depreciation however you want, right, or based off of units. So you have these instructions tabs that can kind of really take you through this and make this easier for you. You can go in and you can key in the new the new assets, define the different depreciation methods as we had on the previous tab. You have these asset lives that can be pre-populated or changed based off the scenario, and then you calculate your depreciation, and then ultimately we push that to our P&L. So we're looking at this capital planning process all the way for West US right now. This $1.5 million, this number, we're going to go ahead and we're going to push that to our profit and loss statement. Just like we did earlier with our HR planning, pushing those expenses to our expense planning, we're going to push that depreciation to our financial statement plan. So we'll open this up. This is the last step in our planning process, and this is where we will wrap up. So we have our P&L plan here as a starting point, and then we have our balance sheet and cash flow. So if we scroll down on our P&L, our revenue and our costs and our expenses, this is all feeding from those detailed models we already looked at, right? So we could also click an update here to update from sales and margin or expense or capital. If we scroll down, we'll see a couple yellow cells where we can input like interest, expense, and other. These are expenses that aren't attributable back to cost centers that are planned at more of this entity level, right? We also see our depreciation number for our new assets coming from our capital plan, so that $1.5 million is pushed from that capital plan. And then for our existing assets as well, we layer that in to give us a total depreciation number, right? So we can make any changes if we want to our P&L plan. What we're really doing here is saying anything beyond these company code level changes should be made back in the source model, right? If you have flexibility to configure it differently, but that's how it's set up by default. We can look at our working capital plan, and based off of the sales plan and P&L plan that we already have in place, we can use drivers like DSO, DIO, DPO to drive our working capital as well as our balance sheet and cash flow. So say, for example, maybe in July, we're hoping that we can negotiate back down our terms and get them back down to 30 days. We can make that change, and that's going to recalculate our AR based off of that driver and our expected sales, right? So that's all going to flush out automatically in our AR. We can also go and plan specific one-off items. So if we look at like inventory, for example, which is being driven by our DIO, if we needed to plan for an upcoming write-off that's going to impact our balance sheet and P&L, we can do that in here too. And that's going to update things, numbers accordingly here too, right? And then you have our balance sheet, which is calculated as a result of those underlying drivers. We can plan in addition to that for changes in PP&E or for changes in debt, and then ultimately we just have our cash flow, which is calculated end result of our P&L balance sheet plan and those underlying drivers. So we click refresh financials, and based off of data action, we basically just, in our account dimension, we have a mapping that says, this goes to that cash flow account, and this is all calculated automatically, and then we can sleep well at the end of the night knowing that the figures check out on the bottom. So that's the financial statement plan. Last, I'll just share with you, reporting output from an example P&L perspective. So as you're getting your actual data in, to review your plan as well as to compare that. So we have standard statements in here that are available. We can look at, our income statements, our trended, our consolidating. So we have these standard report books, and we also have logic to help us with these bridges again. So say, for example, we're looking at right now, total company, we have variances between budgeted OI and actual OI that we want to explain when they come in. We have calculations and logic that help us, attribute what to changes in volumes, changes in price, based off the underlying data, all the way through SG&A, and the FX impact is stripped out of there too. So we could change and drill into this by country, by segment, even into the individual product line. Actually, this analysis goes all the way down to product SKUs and customers. So quite detailed. We've implemented this at many different companies. It's one of our really very popular solution available on top of with standard content with SAP Online Cloud. I'll click on just really quick the I'll just check out the comparative report here, which just gives you an example of some of the reporting, more grid-based reporting that comes out of the solution. So you have your month to date, your quarter to date, your actual versus budget, your variances. You could also pop in other formulas here. This is very Excel-like, right? So you could take this plus this, you just divided that by that, and add quick calculations on the fly, and then you can pop in commentary in addition to this. All right, so that was a lot in an hour. Hopefully that gave you a great overview of the capabilities of this solution with a little imagination and with the experience, that would be glad to help you in your own journey. So here's my contact information. Check out our website. We have a lot of our pre-packaged content available on our website. We have some upcoming really interesting events. Jarrett Bialik from our team in a couple months is in July, I think this is maybe July 13th, is going to be doing a webinar focused on group reporting with SAP Analytics Cloud. A lot of companies want to understand how these solutions work well together, how they can get the best consolidated planning analytics solution for them. As well as we have an upcoming event on pipeline planning. So taking your pipeline data, your CRM data, converting that into sales, something we didn't contemplate at all today. So a couple interesting things. And then as we update our events, we are always posting them out here. So I encourage you to check that out. And definitely, check out our YouTube channel for recordings of a lot of, in more detail, or please feel free to reach out to us. And we'd be happy to help you evaluate how to get the most value out of SAP Analytics Cloud for your company. So with that, I know there are a couple questions. One, how long does it take to implement that I was asked to answer here. So with our prepackaged content here, it's anywhere from 4 to 8 weeks, right, for a low configuration deployment. Now we can also do a medium configuration, or we can build exactly to your specification, right, which is going to be longer based off of your requirements and resource plans. But we work with a lot of companies to start with that low configuration point at least, and for mid-market smaller companies that may be exactly what you want, right? For larger enterprise companies, you may want to then get a feel for what the solution can do and then build it the rest of the way to your specification, right? But we're big on helping you determine that cost benefit and what's the right how can we drive value without overdoing it, right? Keep it simple. One other question, how does SAP Analytics Cloud compared to other solutions that are out there on the market? I think we showed this a lot today, but this solution is really built based off of simplicity, speed, and flexibility, right, as core tenets. So I think there are a lot of other solutions that have been around now for 6-7 years that can't scale like this tool can. So we started some of our first really large implementations in the line of business. We've done a lot of enterprise-wide implementations. So SAP Analytics Cloud can actually really do both, right? It can scale at an enterprise level, it can deliver well to the line of business. So I think that's a key differentiator. It is SAP's one strategic solution for analytics planning together all in one, right? So you're not, building a plan over here and then exporting something to Tableau, or at least you don't need to. And I think what our customers have found, once they get into this tool, there is no need to, right? Because it can meet both requirements. And then the other thing I would mention is the business content. So SAP delivers a lot of great business content, and then partners like ourselves and others, even further extend that for you to help drive value. So yeah, I think that's all the questions I'm going to take for today. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap up, and thank you everyone for joining, and please don't hesitate to reach out if we can help you further explore or help you along your journey.